Hi and welcome. I'm Andy Miocha and you are watching A News. Here are the headlines. Dozens injured after car plows into crowd in Munich ahead of the security conference. Ukraine will not accept any bilateral agreements on its fate reached by Moscow and Washington in its absence, says Volodymyr Zelensky. Hamas says it will release the next group of Israeli hostages as planned after an initial delay. Thank you for tuning in. A car rammed into a crowd in Munich, leaving at least 28 people injured. The suspected attacker, a 24-year-old Afghan asylum seeker, was arrested.
The car that drove into a crowd in Munich has reported to leave dozens injured, 2 in serious condition, according to emergency services. The driver was detained, and authorities assured the public that the driver is no threat. The incident occurred about 1.5 kilometers from the venue of the Munich Security Conference, a high-level event set to be attended by US Vice President J.D. Vance and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, just one day before it was scheduled to begin. A large-scale police operation is underway near Munich's central train station, with authorities urging residents to avoid the area to assist emergency responders. Helicopters were seen circling above as the police cordoned off the scene. Investigations are ongoing, and officers are looking into whether the incident is connected to a demonstration by the service workers' union Verdi, which was taking place at the time. The union has not provided any information on the crash, and it remains unclear whether any demonstrators were among the injured. Security has been a major concern in Germany ahead of the upcoming federal election next week. This incident comes less than 2 months after a car attack at a Christmas market in Magdeburg, which killed 2 people and injured nearly 70 others.
12 people were injured, at least 2 critically, when a grenade was thrown into a packed bar in the French city of Grenoble. An attacker carrying an automatic rifle reportedly entered the bar on Wednesday night and threw the grenade before fleeing without saying a word. The local public prosecutor described the attack as an act of extreme violence. He said investigators had not yet identified a motive, but did not believe it was a terrorist attack, adding that police were looking at whether it was a settling of scores between local gangs. Thousands of Belgians took to the streets in protest over the new government's planned pension reforms in the first day of a multi-day strike that halted all air traffic in the country. The strike was also expected to disrupt public transport and postal services.
Protests grip Belgian capital Brussels as thousands voice their discontent over the government's planned pension reform. The pension reform rewards those who work past retirement age with 35 years of service, while early retirees without 35 years face a penalty. Local police reported that 60,000 people had joined the strike in Brussels. Protesters clashed with police outside the headquarters of Liberal centre-right party MR, part of the governing coalition, with police using tear gas and a water cannon. Local media described similar clashes at the headquarters of another coalition member, Les Engages, a Christian Democrat party. Brussels airport cancelled 430 flights, a spokesperson said, adding that the disruption to the air traffic sector would last just 1 day. Further disruptions to public transport and postal services are expected. The new system is less favourable for lower income earners compared to the previous one, which provided a lump sum based on career length.
European NATO allies are insisting that Ukraine and Europe must not be left out of any peace negotiations, day after US President Donald Trump spoke to Russian leader Vladimir Putin on beginning the talks to end the war. William Denslow reports from NATO's HQ in Brussels.
In response to President Donald Trump's comments, Kaja Kallas, the EU's top diplomat, along with a half dozen European nations, said that Ukraine must have strong security guarantees. Now, this comes after Donald Trump's Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, said that the US would not support Ukraine having NATO membership as part of its long-term security. Now, this is something that Kiev has long been asking for, and something that NATO's officials have been saying they do indeed see Ukraine's future within the military alliance, although they haven't given any timeframes on when that might be. So this is a very strong response from European officials. And a real question now is how the alliance can come together. Mark Rutte, the NATO Secretary General, speaking here at NATO headquarters, has said that it's not unusual for alliance members to not see eye to eye on every point, but he is confident that they will ultimately come together and come up with a solution that is best for Kiev long term. A huge focus of this meeting here in Brussels of defence ministers is of defence spending. US President Donald Trump has long insisted that NATO's allies do more on defence. He wants to see especially European members of the alliance spend upwards of 5% of annual GDP on defence. The current benchmark is 2%. However, Mark Rutte says that he will adjust that and he'll provide a new benchmark a little later this year. This meeting in Brussels is a real focus on what exactly can be done when it comes to boosting defence capacities as well as defence spending, a crucial objective, according to Mark Rutte, not just for the security of Ukraine long term, but for Europe as well. William Denslow, A News, Brussels.
Ukraine will not accept any bilateral agreements on its fate reached by Moscow and Washington in its absence, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said. Zelensky also called for Europe to have a seat at the negotiating table. Stuart Smith has more in Kyiv.
President Zelensky said it was important that these negotiations about the future of Ukraine are not limited to a bilateral negotiation between Washington and Moscow, that Kiev must be included and so should other European capitals as well. He said that he did not think Trump calling Putin before him was any sign of President Trump's priorities, but did suggest it was unpleasant. The European Union Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas has also responded to the seeming exclusion of Europe and Ukraine from these first efforts at peace negotiations, warning against a quick fix or dirty deal. Ukraine, the EU and NATO are all of the opinion that Europe must be included in any discussion about Ukraine's future, with it being Europe that would be affected by the consequences of any peace deal. Now, in terms of what this means for Ukraine going forward, if it refuses to, for example, follow what President Trump and President Putin agree between themselves, possibly in Saudi Arabia, as has been hinted by Donald Trump, it could mean that Ukraine no longer enjoys US support. And to that end, Europe has said that it will step up to fill any gaps in US economic or military support, that it retains what it said on the fact that Ukraine should be able to decide when it engages in negotiations and how they should take place and what the results should be. But it is a big gap to fill if indeed the US does start to apply pressure on Ukraine by threatening to make life harder for Zelensky, because President Trump has made it clear what he wants is a swift fix to this problem, which has now, since the full-scale invasion, been going on for nearly 3 years. Stuart Smith in Kyiv for A News.
Moldova said 2 Russian drones had blown up on its soil, and NATO member Romania said its airspace had likely been breached. Moldova summoned Russia's ambassador after it said the drones crashed on its territory. The Eastern European country reported violations of its airspace during Russia's overnight attacks on neighboring Ukraine's Danube port. Romania's defense ministry also reported detecting possible airspace breaches during the Russian attack on Ukraine. Out of 140 drones, the Ukrainian military said it shot down 85, and 52 drones did not reach their targets, likely due to electronic countermeasures. Hamas said it would release the next group of Israeli hostages as planned, paving the way toward resolving a major dispute that threatened the ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. The group said Egyptian and Qatari mediators have affirmed that they will work to remove all hurdles and that it would implement the truce deal. The statement indicated 3 more Israeli hostages would be freed on Saturday. There was no immediate comment from Israel. Continued violence in eastern Congo has displaced more than 100,000 people from Goma. With U.S. funding halted, relief efforts are now severely disrupted.
Widespread security issues, looting of supplies, the closure of Goma airport and a cut in funding have meant the humanitarian crisis in eastern Congo has worsened, and it's now severely disrupting relief efforts. That's according to the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. It's despite leaders calling for a ceasefire. The M23 rebels are advancing on Bukavu. They already took control of Goma, displacing more than 110,000 people. Around 1 million are already displaced since 2022. The United Nations says eastern Congo relies heavily on US aid, and funding cuts have already stopped several projects.
Dépendant à 70%. On est ultra dépendant.
Out of the $1.3 billion in humanitarian aid, $910 million came from the US, meaning we are 70% dependent on it. This makes Congo the most aid-dependent country in the world, and replacing that funding will be extremely difficult. The consequences are already being felt, as several partners have had to pause their projects.
Ça sera très difficile à trouver des alternatives.
The M23, a rebel group formed in 2012 with mainly ethnic Tutsi fighters, emerged after a peace agreement they claimed was violated. Since then, they have launched violent campaigns in eastern Congo. After resurfacing in 2021, the group advanced into South Kivu in early 2025, capturing Goma and declaring their own administration. Backed by Rwanda, the M23 claims to be fighting for the rights of ethnic Tutsis, while the government of the Democratic Republic of Congo argues that the group seeks control of the region's valuable mineral resources.
The United Nations warned that over 1 million Afghan refugees in Pakistan will be severely impacted by the suspension of U.S. financial aid and called for urgent international support. Our Tamim Bahiz brings more on that.
The United Nations has warned that over 1 million Afghan refugees in Pakistan will be impacted following the suspension of U.S. financial aid. The funding crisis has already started affecting essential services, with many refugees raising concerns about deteriorating conditions. The suspension of U.S. financial assistance has put critical humanitarian programs in jeopardy. Among the most affected are Afghan refugees living in Pakistan, with reports indicating that approximately 60 health facilities serving them will be forced to shut down. The United Nations Population Fund has stated that to continue vital programs in Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, more than $308 million is needed this year. Meanwhile, Afghan refugees in Pakistan have expressed frustration over the decreasing support from UN agencies. Some have reported that reduction in services have made the already difficult living conditions even more challenging. The UN continues to appeal for urgent international assistance to prevent further disruptions in these critical aid programs. Tamim Bahiz, A News, Kabul, Afghanistan.
At least 5 people have been killed and several others injured in a suspected gas explosion in a shopping mall in Taichung, Taiwan. The explosion happened on the 12th floor of the building, and officials believe the blast may have been caused by a gas leak during renovations or replacement of a gas canister at a closed food court. At least 1 person has died in Chile's southern region of La Araucanía as firefighters continue to battle 8 raging wildfires. The flames destroyed some 30 homes.
Flames tore through Chile's central Araucania region, turning forests into ashes. The wildfires have already killed one person, destroyed 30 homes, and displaced dozens. That's according to the National Service for Disaster Prevention and Response. Authorities remain on high alert and are closely monitoring the situation. Helicopters are dropping water over the affected areas, and tractors dig fire breaks to slow the blaze, as thick smoke billows across the landscape.
According to information provided by the National Forestry Corporation, we are fighting 8 fires. Since yesterday, the situation has become more critical, and the fire has advanced from the Galvarino sector and has reached the municipality of Traiguén.
The crisis follows last year's wildfires in the Valparaiso region, which killed at least 136 people and destroyed more than 6,600 homes.
Vietnam's capital, Hanoi, has been ranked the world's most polluted city by the Air Quality Index. Residents and visitors voiced their worries and frustration over the hazardous air.
Globally, every year, air pollution causes around 7 million deaths per year. In the capital, Vietnam, there's at least 70,000 people who die each year from toxic air, according to the United Nations' latest figures. Hanoi has been ranked as the most polluted city in the world, according to the Air Quality Index. There are increasing concerns from residents and tourists who are frustrated over the city's persistently hazardous blanket of smog.
There are days when the level of pollution is sky high. It's not that the sky is gloomy, but it's covered in a blanket of dust and fog. My job takes me mostly to places like the forests and oceans, so I don't stay much in Hanoi. But when I do, it's extremely uncomfortable, even though this area has a lake, lots of green trees, and less traffic.
Visitors wear face masks full time to avoid inhaling the dirty air.
If I have to stay in Hanoi for a while, its polluted air would damage my health. I have to wear a face mask every time. The air is severely polluted because of the sheer number of motor vehicles on the road. There are just too many of them.
The country is committed to reaching zero carbon emissions by 2050 and has joined the World Health Organization's Alliance for Action on Climate Change and Health. However, with nearly 9 million people who live in the country, with more than 8 million registered vehicles, there are calls for the country to do more to reduce its reliance on fossil fuels and move towards cleaner vehicles. There are also calls to reduce the burning of crops and rubbish outdoors.
Azerbaijan intends to hold Armenia internationally accountable for alleged environmental destruction during the occupation. Baku says it's seeking reparations for destruction of habitats and species in territories previously occupied by Armenia.
Azerbaijan filed a statement of claim with the Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague against Armenia under the Berne Convention on the Conservation of European Wildlife and Natural Habitats. The claim outlines Armenia's alleged violations of its obligations under the convention. After regaining its territories, Azerbaijan reported significant environmental destruction, accusing Armenia of failing to protect habitats and species in a key biodiversity hotspot. Azerbaijan claims this damage is severe and irreversible. The legal process began in January 2023, when Azerbaijan served a notice of arbitration on Armenia. The arbitral tribunal was confirmed in September 2023, and the first procedural conference took place in April last year in The Hague. Azerbaijan seeks full reparations from Armenia for widespread environmental damage, including deforestation, unsustainable logging, mining and hydropower construction during Armenia's occupation. These activities allegedly harmed numerous wildlife species and their habitats. A United Nations Environment Programme's report highlighted damage to protected forests in Azerbaijan, including ancient trees over 2,000 years old, and noted chemical pollution from mining activities that threatened fish and amphibian species.
The Azerbaijan National NGO Forum presented an appeal to U.S. President Donald Trump and his advisor Elon Musk regarding USAID's activities in the country. Nigar Shirinova has more.
Today, Ramil Iskandarli, chairman of the Azerbaijan National NGO Forum, has presented an appeal from Azerbaijani non-governmental organizations addressed to United States President Donald Trump and Elon Musk, who is head of the Department of Government Efficiency, concerning the role of USAID, the U.S. Agency for International Development in Azerbaijan. USAID, which has been officially tasked with overseeing American aid worldwide, is currently at the center of a heated controversy with claims as to its incompetence, inefficiency and partisan nature being voiced by members of the Trump administration and many others. Critics including Donald Trump and Elon Musk have also accused the entity in the question of interference in the internal affairs of foreign countries. And also they argue that USAID's funding has often been misaligned with US strategic interests and has at times supported agendas that only benefit certain political factions. Recently, USAID has been financing media entities across various regions, including Americas, Europe and also Asia, raising concerns over transparency and the organization's influence on political and also social outcomes. This has triggered backlash in several countries, including Azerbaijan, where the government has expressed its dissatisfaction. Just days ago, Azerbaijani Foreign Ministry issued a statement declaring that there were no legal grounds for USAID's operations in the country. And also, Azerbaijan officials have accused the agency of fueling negative international reactions surrounding major events in Azerbaijan, such as the Eurovision Song Contest in 2012, the ecological protest in Lachin Road in 2023, and also the COP29, the World Top Climate Summit in 2024. Today's appeal from Azerbaijan NGO calling for the greater accountability in the field, with the key sensibility being that programs of this nature should always be arranged with the local exigencies. In their appeal, the Azerbaijani National NGO Forum, whilst acknowledging the efforts of President Trump and Elon Musk, also aim to want that they describe as USAID's misconduct also an investigation ways of which US taxpayers' needs have been used in Azerbaijan, accusing USAID's amongst the other things that was damaging the US-Azerbaijani relations well. That's all for now. Stay tuned for more. Nigar Shirinova, A-News, Baku, Azerbaijan.
Kazakhstan and Tajikistan continue to boost economic ties, with trade rising 7.4% last year to reach $1.2 billion. Both countries aim to increase this number to $2 billion. Fariza Kalimurzina has more.
Kazakhstan and Tajikistan are strengthening their economic relations, with trade between the two countries increasing by 7.4% last year, reaching $1.2 billion. Both nations aim to raise this figure to $2 billion, focusing on key sectors such as agriculture, transit, digitalization and energy cooperation. During an official visit to Astana, Tajik Foreign Minister Sirojiddin Mukhriddin met with Kazakh President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev, who highlighted the strong and growing ties between the two countries. Tokayev emphasized their strategic partnership and noted that there are no unresolved issues between Kazakhstan and Tajikistan. The discussions centered on implementing previous agreements and exploring future cooperation in areas such as trade, regional security, water and energy management, and economic development in Central Asia. Mukhriddin also met with Kazakhstan's Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Murat Nurtuliev to discuss a broad range of bilateral matters, including political, economic, transport and cultural issues. Agriculture, which accounts for more than 40% of the trade between Kazakhstan and Tajikistan, was identified as a key growth sector. Kazakhstan is ready to expand exports of wheat, flour and confectionery products under favorable terms. In a significant development, the two countries agreed to sign a deal in the electric power sector that will outline the terms of supplying electricity from the Rogun hydropower plant in Tajikistan to Kazakhstan. It was previously reported that Tajik electricity will be supplied only during plant shortages, and Kazakhstan will receive electricity at least until 2044. Kazakhstan is one of Tajikistan's top 3 trading partners. Last year, during a meeting between the leaders of the two countries in Dushanbe, they signed a treaty establishing allied relations, marking a new milestone in their bilateral ties. From Almaty, Kazakhstan, Fariza Kalimurzina, A News.
U.S. energy giant Chevron has announced plans to lay off around 15 to 20% of its global workforce as a cost-cutting measure. The company's shares dropped following the announcement.
The American oil and gas giant Chevron aims to streamline its global workforce and cut costs by reducing 20% of its staff by the end of 2026. The move will affect around 8,000 people globally. At the end of 2023, it employed more than 40,000 people. The number 2 U.S. oil producer says the move is part of its strategy to simplify operations and drive growth. Vice Chairman of the Chevron Corporation, Mark Nelson, says that the changes will optimize its $280 billion portfolio, leverage new technologies to boost productivity, and reshape business processes. In November, the energy company announced the goal of saving $2 to $3 billion through asset sales and adopting new technologies. Since this announcement, Chevron's shares dropped by about 1%. The oil giant faces uncertainties due to slowing global demand, rising costs at its major Kazakhstan oil project, and legal disputes with ExxonMobil. Despite posting a record $36.5 billion profit in 2022, the company's net income fell to $21.4 billion in 2023 and further declined to $17.7 billion last year as oil prices dropped. Chevron aims to cut up to $3 billion in costs by 2026, with employer buyout offers set to begin in April or May.
Japanese Toyota Motor Corporation and Mitsubishi Heavy Industries have banned their employees from using a generative artificial intelligence model developed by the Chinese startup DeepSeek. Toyota, the world's largest automaker by volume, cited concerns over information security, while Mitsubishi Heavy, a major defense firm, similarly does not permit employees to use it for work purposes. Japanese government earlier urged caution on using DeepSeek because data collected by the AI, including personal information, is stored in servers in China, and the handling of the information is subject to Chinese laws. Merger talks between Honda and Nissan have collapsed after the firms failed to agree on a multi-billion-dollar tie-up. The Japanese car makers, along with junior partner Mitsubishi, had aimed to combine their businesses to fight back against competition from rival firms, especially in China.
The Japanese car makers Honda and Nissan, along with junior partner Mitsubishi, have officially ended talks of a merger, terminating the Memorandum of Understanding signed in December. The proposed merger collapsed over disagreements, including Honda's push for Nissan to become a subsidiary and concerns over Nissan's recovery efforts. Nissan recently announced plans to cut 9,000 jobs and reduce global production capacity by 20%, but its proposals failed to convince Honda of a sustainable turnaround. While the merger would have created the world's third largest automaker, the three companies now plan to collaborate strategically on intelligent and electrified vehicles.
Europe's tallest volcano, Mount Etna, put on a show with plumes of smoke rising from its summit and lava flowing from its crater, as Sicily is recording ongoing seismic activity with several earthquakes.
Standing at more than 3,000 meters over the Sicilian landscape in Italy, Europe's tallest and most active volcano released a massive eruption of lava, fire, and gas high into the air on Wednesday morning. At 10:30 a.m. local time, lava started seeping from a crack on the southern slope of the crater called Boca Nova, which means new mouth. No sign of changes were recorded in the volcano's perimeters, according to experts. Italian media reported there were no alarm alerts, with authorities tracking the situation. In 2013, UNESCO added the volcano as a World Heritage Site, recognizing its strategic geological location and its impact on the local culture and economy.
Well, that's all we have for you for now. Thank you for watching and do stay tuned to A News.